want to welcome everyone to our newest PRSA virtual program. I'm Amanda Lestgraff, and I'm your PRSA Nebraska chapter president. We're eager to try something new to us today. This is our first panel discussion over Zoom, so thank you for joining along with us. We're offering all of our programming virtually for the indefinite future with the health and safety of our members as our top priority. Plus, these virtual programs actually allow us to connect with the entire state, and as a statewide chapter, that's very important to us. We actually have another exciting virtual program later next month that I'll talk about in a minute. First, with all of our events, I have a few brief announcements. You're probably familiar with Zoom at this point, but just in case, we'll have you keep yourself on mute until you're ready to speak, especially with a group of this size. I'm not as worried about that. It's kind of nice to see everyone's faces and chime in. We'll also use the chat function, so if you have questions you'd like to ask, feel free to chime in there. I want to extend a special welcome to our non-members as well as our members today. It's the year of membership for PRSA Nebraska and a great time to join. If you use the promo code TRIPLEPLAY20, you'll get a free chapter and section membership, plus you'll get your initiation or reinstatement fee waived. Some restrictions do apply, so check out prsa.org for all the info. Next, I'd like to thank our chapter sponsors, Woodman Life, Omaha Steaks, Bergman Incentives, Lucas Partners, MSpace and Lovegren, FNBO, and Envoy Inc. Our sponsors help with a whole lot in our chapter and fund our scholarships as well. There are many benefits to becoming a sponsor. Please email me or Kathy Bernecki if you are interested. As I mentioned earlier, we hope you'll join us next month on Wednesday, November 18th to learn how a local volunteer-run organization has experienced significant growth over the last several years. We'll hear from Katie Triplett, president of the Junior League of Omaha, about how they've grown their membership to more than 800 women throughout the community. Very interested in that one. One more thing, feel free to tweet along during this program and use the hashtag PRSANE. And now on to our program. I'm going to turn it over to Erin Van Zee, who is our programming co-chair. She'll facilitate this discussion about freelancing.
Thanks, Amanda. So first off, thank you to all of our freelancers who are joining us today. Like I mentioned, this will be a really informal discussion, just getting their perspective on not only freelancing now, or not only freelancing in general, but maybe some ideas about freelancing in the middle of a pandemic, which I'm sure is a bit of a unique experience. And so I think to start off with, we'll just kind of go around and have each person just give us brief introduction of who you are and your main focus of freelance work. And then we'll kind of just dive into some questions that we have about what it's like, what your processes are, and some advice you might give to people who are looking to get into freelance themselves. So I'm just gonna go through the list that I have, like how I see it on my screen. We'll go that way. And we'll start with Leanne. If Leanne, you wanna go first.
Hi, everyone. I am Leanne Mormon, as it says in my little box right there. I am a new freelancer. I just started doing this gig, if you will, like 2 to 3 months ago. In June, actually, is when I really officially started. And I come from originally the world of news media, working at WWT for about a decade, then went into PR and marketing, and really my specialty for freelancing is just, communications. I'm more of a generalist. I always have been, even since I started at WWT as their first backpack journalist, which kind of, you dip your toe in everything. So really, as a new freelancer, I've been enjoying doing a little bit of everything because I like doing graphic design. I like doing writing. I like just doing communication campaigns. I'm a very strategic thinker. So it's been really neat and a really rewarding experience to kind of, dip a toe into every aspect of communication that's out there.
Wonderful, thank you. Mike, I think you're next.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Mike Watkins. I've been freelancing for 20 years now, but not exclusively. I've also had jobs while I was freelancing. I started when okay, so back up for a second. I worked in sports information for a while, and that's kind of how I got started into freelancing. Was a contact that I had from when I was working for USA Basketball. I met through USA Swimming, and then I started freelancing for USA Swimming, and I've been freelancing for them for 20 years. So that kind of started and it's continued. So my niche is probably more sports. I really love sports. I'm a sports fiend. So I really get into that. But lately, I've tried to branch out a little more, and I'm doing more nonprofits, small nonprofits, and small businesses. And what I try to do is offer a round of services like social media, writing, web, some graphic, like Leanne said, some graphic design, although that's not my strength. And just really trying to be the small agency for small businesses that can't afford to hire someone, but also cannot afford to hire a big agency because they just don't have a need or the budget. So that's kind of how I got started. And I'm actually working full time now for a nonprofit, but I'm still freelancing on the side. So I can't give up freelancing.
Wonderful, thank you. Melissa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa. I've been freelancing full time for a little bit over a year now. Kind of the stepping stone that launched me into taking this on full time was just the opportunity for more clients. I came from a strong agency background and also did a little bit of in-house marketing and PR work. Specifically, a lot of focus on healthcare clients. And the cards just kind of aligned. My husband is actually a healthcare provider and had connected me with some other clients. And when the cards lined up, I decided, you know what, now's as good a time as ever to take this leap of faith. And it worked out really well for us because we just had our first child in May. And she was actually born 12 weeks early. So it was really a blessing in disguise that I took this leap of faith last fall because I have had the flexibility to not only be there with her in the NICU when she was there, but now also during COVID when, you know, safety and health concerns are at an all-time high. I feel really fortunate to be able to work from home. So as I mentioned, my specialty is really in healthcare. So I'm a copywriter. I also do PR and strategy. I also have a background in agriculture and the food ingredient industry. But healthcare and health and wellness is really kind of what separates me from a lot of other copywriters in the industry. And I think that that's something that's really important to be able to do if you can kind of figure out a niche or a differentiator for yourself. And for me, it was always health communications. And I like to say that my passion or my own personal mission statement is helping people make more informed decisions for their health. Because as we all know, especially right now, it's really hard to make informed decisions about healthcare and our health.
Yeah, great points. Thanks, Melissa. And then Julie, I think you are our last freelancer. Would you like to give us a little bit of information about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Julie, and like Leanne and some others, I got into freelancing more recently, and I'm freelancing right now at The Reader. I started out helping them with their Best of the Big O content, so writing stories, promotional or sponsored stories about the various businesses in Omaha and their services. And then I also helped them with their recent virtual Facebook event called Food Day, where they were celebrating local food related organizations and how they've contributed and helped people during the pandemic. So I'm also helping with another delivery service that they'd like to launch. So I'm really doing a lot of food related content, writing, you know, stories, blog stories, working on social media. So that's sort of my niche right now. And I'm enjoying that and kind of looking to do freelance more in the future, especially with the pandemic going on. So really from this seminar, I'm looking to learn how I can market myself and, grow and really differentiate my skills and, branch out into different areas. Like Melissa said, health being a priority right now, I'm just trying to see how I can, again, grow my skill set and really stand out in the crowd.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Julie. And that actually, so Mike, you're obviously, you I think have the most experience of all the freelancers that we have here. So in your experience, what's a good way to differentiate yourself or promote yourself to people looking for opportunities to connect with freelancers? How have you kind of done that in your own career?
It's a good question. I've had a good bit of luck along the way, I won't lie. My first freelance project started, like I said, because of a relationship that I already had. And that's my first thought, was reach out to those relationships that exist already. That's my first, that's what I always do first. I also think for me, it was always having a good, not focusing on one thing. Know what you're good at, but don't focus on one area or one publication or one type of publication. And that's if you want to write. If you want to exclusively do freelance writing as opposed to freelance communications, which I think is more inclusive of like social media communications, like Leanne said, strategic communication type stuff. Reach out to the people that you know, start with that. And then I think if you have an idea for a story, or what kind of area that you really want to focus on, start targeting those types of businesses that you like. Find out who the people are that you need to talk to. That can be challenging, but the internet is obviously a great source, and so is social media. I've reached out to numerous people through contacts that I made through LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. And don't be afraid to be turned down the first few times you ask or you pitch something, because that can be very defeatist. You can have a very defeatist feeling, like this isn't working. What am I going to do now? But eventually those start to turn into opportunities. And like recently I reached out to a sports magazine through a contact on LinkedIn, and they've been hit pretty hard by COVID. So a lot of sporting events aren't happening. Things like that. You know how bad Omaha was hit with no College World Series, and then the swim trials got moved to next year. But I keep that relationship going. I'll reach out to him, every other month or something like that, and say, hey, how are things going? Are you ready to do anything now? Oftentimes the answer is no, but maintaining those relationships is really important in freelancing, because you never know when the next thing's going to come along, or somebody knows somebody who might need your services. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, that's great advice. Relationships are so critical. And I think starting out with who you know is always a good place, because they can hopefully connect you with other people at some point if there are other people looking for opportunities as well. So that also kind of leads me to the next question. And Leanne, I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Freelancing in a global pandemic, where obviously a lot of things are changing all the time. Can you talk and Leanne, you made the choice to become a freelancer a little bit in the middle of all of this. So can you talk a little bit about your experience doing that? And you've said before that you think it's actually a really great time to do it. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and give us insight into why you feel that way?
Sorry, my computer froze a little bit. So that's the perfect lead into this question. Yeah, so it was, it was a tough decision to make, but ultimately, I've always kind of had that self-starter mindset. And I always have enjoyed, even in my news days, the best part was just meeting new people, and talking to people and helping people. Number one, that's one of the reasons why I'm in this field that I am, is because through your efforts of communications, you can really truly make a difference and help people. You know, Erin, you and I were talking on LinkedIn about the great infographics that have been coming out from our healthcare communication leaders that have, you know, really put into perspective, you know, where you should go in the pandemic and the safety levels. You know, it's things like that that are a great example of how you can help people with communication. And just, you know, always having that entrepreneurial mindset, whether I wanted to have it or not, it's just ingrained. And I think it's just ingrained in who I am. And it was, you know, the pandemic, everything seemed to speed up for communication professionals, but it slowed down in the rest of your aspects of life. And to me, that seemed like the perfect time for me to take a step back and think like, okay, what do I want my life and my work life to be? And that led me to the decision to freelance, because like I said, I thoroughly enjoy getting to know new people, learning from people, and getting to kind of chart my own course and forge my own path forward.
Yeah, I love that. And that leads me to my next question, which is, what does an average day look like for a freelancer? And Melissa, I'd be curious to hear what you say about this too. Like, is it harder to balance like your work and home life because your home is essentially in many ways your office, and the distinction between the two literally is physically not maybe as present? So I guess that's sort of two questions. One is, how do you kind of find that balance? And two, what does an average day as a freelancer look like?
I think I'll answer your second question first. I think, to be honest, an average day for a freelancer, it varies day to day, and I think we would all probably agree with that. But that's also one of the benefits of freelancing, is that it's not just the mundane every single day. For me, balancing life as a new mom and primarily stay-at-home mom while being a full-time freelancer requires setting boundaries and just having open dialogue with my husband. And, you know, I'm fortunate to have family in town that, you know, if I do have to go to a client meeting or things like that, we have those opportunities for our daughter. And honestly, I just balance, and it's a lot of planning, a lot of work during nap times, and a lot of evening work, which, to be honest, I feel like in our industry, that's what we were doing anyway. So it's not that different for me to be, you know, plowing through a blog post at 8 or 9 p.m. before heading to bed, once I've got the baby to bed. So a lot of planning and a lot of setting boundaries and just being clear and communicating with my husband.
Yeah, great. Communicating seems like a really important piece of all of this. So when you are looking out into the future of your freelance career and thinking about how you can develop yourself and get more clients, things like that, how do you, I mean, you know, Mike, I know you talked about leveraging existing relationships, but what does like business development look like? How do you drum up business for yourself? Once you've maybe exhausted those existing relationships, how do you kind of go out and get new work to try and maintain the workflow and make sure you have continual work coming in? Mike, I'll let you start with that one.
Well, for me, I think the key is diversification. I have a lot of different clients. So a lot of long-term clients, a lot of short-term clients. And for me, the important part is to focus on the long-term clients and keep them happy, because that's where the regular money's coming in. And the most rewarding work often is from that group. Short-term clients for me are maybe a one-off project or maybe a strategic plan or something like that, that I hope will eventually evolve into something more long-term. But oftentimes that doesn't happen. So, but that doesn't mean they won't come back to you later. So for me, having a really strong base of consistent clients is really important to me that I know I can always count on, but adding in new ones and being very selective. I think that's one of the good things about being an established freelancer. Maybe when you're starting out, you don't have those options as much. You just want to take work because you need to make money and then create relationships. But for longer term clients and for longer term freelancers, having that basis of steady work, steady income is really important. And then you can be really choosy about what you want to do moving forward. So you don't always have to just take a project. I'm moving more into corporate, more into small business, as I said, because that's really where the money is. And I mean, whatever motivates you to do this, if it's money or freedom or opportunity or whatever, you have to find that motivation, and that really was what drives you. And for me, I like working with nonprofit clients because I feel like I'm doing something really good for them, and that's very rewarding for me.
Absolutely. Leanne or Melissa, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, Bev Carlson said something at one of our actual in-person PRSA board meetings like last year. I think it was Amanda's first meeting as president, when we were talking about PRSA and membership. And the thing that she said that has really stuck with me in this journey is to treat yourself as your own client. And all of the work that you would do for like a public relations campaign for your clients, you should be doing for yourself to market yourself out there. And I loved what Mike said about, don't be afraid to be turned down. It's really about planting seeds for the future, because, you may get turned down, but they may come back to you. And maybe Mike can attest to this, but they may come back to you, 6 months, a year down the road and say, hey, we really could use your help right about now. And we remembered you from way back when we had that random email or random call. So that's what I would have to add.
Yeah, I think Leanne hit on a really good note. It's hard for us, I think, to market ourselves. It's kind of like the saying, the cobbler's children have no shoes. We spend our time doing PR and marketing and communications for our clients, and we sometimes put ourselves on the back burner. But it's really important to value ourselves and see the value and communicate that to current and prospective clients. I would say that pre-COVID, an area or an opportunity for me to meet a lot of clients and drum up work was through coffee meetings. I would just, reach out to local agencies or organizations in the metro that I thought would be a good fit for what I do, ask them to grab coffee or, meet after work. And through that, a lot of other doors opened. Maybe the person I was meeting didn't have something for me, but they knew of another organization or a possible client that would be a fit for me, and they sent them my way. Obviously now in the peak of COVID, that's not really as much of an option. But I think the important thing is just taking that leap of faith and just realizing that, like the other two said, that door might not be open now, but it could come back full circle down the road, or it might have other legs for other opportunities. So don't be afraid to ask existing clients if they know others who might have an interest in the services that you can provide.
Yeah, that's great.
I want to add to that. So that's how I met Melissa, she reached out to my boss, Elizabeth. I think, I don't even know, because then Elizabeth just brought me along to the coffee. So that was like super great. I mean, and we haven't sent like a ton of business Melissa's way, but she did some work for us, and she's great at keeping in touch with us. She'll like reach out every quarter or what, I don't even know. Maybe you have like a more regular schedule. I don't know, but I mean, I always feel bad because we haven't had any work to send her way, but I appreciate that she's still keeping in touch. I mean, from the agency point of view, like, And I want to like something, I think Mike, you said something about story ideas, and that like totally like, I think if you have an idea, like if you do go that extra, if you take that extra step and like, I'm not saying do this with me, but let's just say you go to an agency's website and you see who their clients are, and then you go to that person's or that organization's website and you see their blog, and maybe you have an idea for the, you know, like to me, like that would be, maybe we could find some money for that, you know, like we're always, I think ideas are like invaluable. And I think going that extra step of saying, hey, I noticed this is, you've been talking about this on your blog, or you've been talking about this on your social media. I have another idea that maybe this might be like, and I've done some research about this audience. And I mean, I know like that's time and that's money, but I don't know, that is like gold, I would say. So just, again, not that I have extra money for my clients right now, but that would be amazing.
Yeah, you're throwing out ideas. I love it. So when you're thinking about like working with clients, and this is something I've always been curious about too, how do you value your contributions? How do you decide what you're going to charge clients for your work? I think that can be especially difficult in an industry like ours, where the ROI isn't always super linear. You know, you can't always say this happened because of this. How do you say to clients, this is what I'm charging, and how do you figure out what that is, and then how do you communicate that?
Leanne, you have a great resource I want you to share, if that's okay.
Yes, so PRSA has an independent practitioners alliance section that when I was first getting started, I was just kind of, I tapped into some of my friends that own small businesses in my network, and I looked, through PRSA and found I just kind of stumbled across it. I didn't even know that it existed, and I was like, oh, awesome, this is a thing. So it's a section in PRSA that is just all independent freelancers, and they do a state of indie business report every year, where they survey freelancers all across the country and ask them, okay, what are your rates that you're charging? And then they come up with like a median rate, and it's just a ton of data that I found really, really helpful for that aspect of charging.
That is super interesting. Leanne, if you have that.
Yeah, I'll send the link out.
Yeah, send that, share that with people. Mike or Melissa, anything to add to that?
I would say just honestly doing your research. For me, it was a little bit easier because I came from the agency side. So I had a little bit of knowledge of what we would charge our clients. But obviously that's a lot of trial and error. One of the biggest learning blocks that I've come across, especially when working with direct clients, is being willing to negotiate a little bit, but not sell myself short. And I would say that's a really strong piece of advice for anyone who's starting out. Recognize your value, but also don't be so rigid that you're not willing to work with a client that you ultimately close the door. One thing that I do to solve that is I will come at a client with, here are my hourly rates for X, Y, and Z. But if that doesn't work for you, we can negotiate a per project rate. And then I try to get, a series of blog posts out of them, for example. So that's kind of a piece of advice that was given to me that I felt like would be helpful for other freelancers as well.
Yeah, Melissa, I totally agree. I think you got to know your worth, as you said, know your value, and stay true to that, because my clients, they vary. So sometimes I charge by the hour, sometimes it's by the project. I'm always up to negotiating. So if I know what I want to charge, and I will start with that when I talk with them and say, here's what I normally charge. And I know that you guys are a nonprofit, and I know that your money's a little bit limited. I really want to work with you. And that's another thing, I think, is how badly do you want to work with that client? If you really, really want to work with them, you see the value in what they do, you see opportunity, you might want to lower your rates a little bit so that you can work with them, because ultimately, I think down the road that will raise, your opportunities will come from that. But yeah, don't sell yourself short. Now, when you're starting out, that's not always easy to do because you're trying to establish relationships and find clients. So you might be willing to accept something that 5 years later, you won't take because you're like, that's just not worth my time. But it's all about establishing who you are, what your value is, what you want to do. I mean, that's why we got into freelancing, isn't it? Because we wanted to be able to choose what we do and who we work with. And I think that's where the value is. So Melissa, I totally agree.
Yeah, that's good advice in general, but certainly for freelancers who really have to be their own advocates nearly 100% of the time. One of the questions that came in as a follow-up to that is, what tools or programs are you using to manage the money, the business side of things, like taxes, insurance, stuff like that? Are there specific tools that you tend to use for those things?
I'm sure others I don't know if others want to chime in, but I'll just dive in first. So this was a question that I was really excited to answer. It's a question that I think intimidates a lot of freelancers, but the biggest piece of advice that I was given before I decided to jump out and go off on my own full time was paper up. So I got in contact with an attorney and an accountant because, let's face it, I'm a copywriter and a strategist. Like, numbers and crunching numbers isn't really my specialty. That's why I got into this type of work. So finding someone who can provide those services to me and take that off my plate has been such a tremendous help. So there's also tons of software out there. QuickBooks, for example, is a great tool. But if you're just getting started and you just need something for the immediate, honestly, it can be as simple as creating an Excel document and make sure that you do create an estimate, have your client or the agency that you're working for sign that estimate before you begin any work, and then use that to create an invoice to send to them. But make it clear if you have a certain amount of time that you do expect payment back. For me, I say anywhere from 30 to 45 days usually. And I just try to make those expectations clear with the client that I'm working for. Really, it's a checks and balances system, but QuickBooks is a great resource and a tool. I know that some of you guys might use some others.
Yeah, I started off by talking with an attorney, and I was fortunate enough where my cousin owns a CPA firm, Bland and Associates. So kind of got some free advice there. And I use QuickBooks. I love it. It's the greatest thing ever. It's so easy, and it just makes life just a breeze. And you can pay electronically, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Mike, anything to add? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
This is my area where I struggle the most. I did not take good steps at the beginning, like Leanne and Melissa did. I handle most of my stuff myself. And when I file my taxes, I file not as a company, as a sole proprietor. So I take a fairly decent hit every year on my taxes, although that's changing now. Somebody told me to become an LLC, which I looked into, but it didn't really make sense for me. So one good thing about having a tax preparer or somebody is you can deduct those from your taxes. So those are services that, and as freelancers, because we're not having regular taxes taken out usually, we need those deductions. Yeah, for me, I do all my invoicing, and I'm terrible about what Leanne said. I don't put a time, or Melissa, I can't remember who said it, but about saying payment due in 30 days. I'm horrible about that, but I keep track of all of that in a spreadsheet. So I know when I send something, and when it should be due to me. And then I always follow up. But I have regular clients that I can depend on. So I know they're going to pay me eventually. You know, sometimes you don't get paid. That's a reality, but it is what it is.
I would also add that if you are meeting in person or doing anything for a client, obviously times are a little bit different right now, but COVID aside, keep those receipts because those can be obviously used for tax deductions. So if you're meeting for coffee and things like that, just kind of creating some sort of a filing system. If you don't have the QuickBooks option, at least just create a file folder to get yourself somewhat organized if you're just getting started.
Yeah, that's great advice.
One thing I wanted to add was insurance. Somebody asked about insurance. I went for several years without health insurance as a freelancer, and that's not good, obviously. But I couldn't get on Obamacare because my income wasn't the same every month, and you had to be able to prove that you make this amount of money to get this amount of support. So I went full on with no insurance for a long time, and I mean, obviously that's not ideal, but that is definitely something that a lot of people may not, and I'm not married, so I don't have a spouse that I could be on their policy. If you have a spouse, you can obviously be on their policy. That really helps. But as a single person who is freelancing, insurance is definitely something to look into early on so that you aren't in my situation. I was fortunate not to have any issues with my health, but knock on wood.
Yeah.
But you know, it is a consideration.
Well, and Mike, I think that is actually a good kind of segue into another question, which is, you know, there are lots of benefits to freelancing. You can be your own boss and you kind of decide some of how you spend your time a little bit more than if you had a 9-to-5 job for a corporate office. In addition to some of the uncertainties around things like insurance, what would you say are the most challenging aspects of being a freelancer?
Do you want me to go first? Go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry, I probably should have let you dive in.
No, go ahead.
I will piggyback off of Mike with the insurance comment. So while I am married, my husband owns his own business as well. So, you know, we're both kind of in a catch-22. I didn't have the luxury of enrolling, you know, through my spouse's insurance. So I did go to the marketplace. So that's a good place to look, obviously, but there are also health sharing organizations like Sedera, Christian or Samaritan, things like that you can also look into. So if you are considering freelancing and you're not going to go to the marketplace or you don't think that you qualify for that, know that there are health sharing ministries as an option. Kind of as I already mentioned, papering up is really, I think, the biggest thing. And it was probably what created the most anxiety for me prior to actually taking the leap. And then the other thing is just making sure that I have some sort of a checks and balances system and holding myself accountable. For me, I don't know if anyone has done the Enneagram test, but I'm a type 1, so super organized, perfectionist. So it works well for me to be a freelancer because I'm organized, but at the same time, there is that ebb and flow of freelancing. So just creating something that holds me accountable every day is really important. Utilizing my attorney for creating a master service agreement for my clients. I have heard a lot of horror stories of friends in the freelancing world doing work for clients and then not getting paid. And so for me, it was really important to have that legal paperwork established. And like I mentioned earlier, my process has always been sending an estimate to the client, have them sign it before I do any work. It just protects me and it also protects them. And another tip that I usually provide anyone who's getting started, personally, I say this is obviously just an estimate, but if revisions are more than 25% of the of the content or the work that's produced, say, then a revised work order will be provided, because I want to make sure that I'm staying on strategy and on budget for that client. And so having clear communications and getting them to sign and be on the same page with you before you do any work is a really big piece of advice.
I feel like the revision comment is probably super relevant to a lot of people, even if you're not a freelancer. So I appreciate that very much. Mike, were you going to say something too?
I don't remember what your question was, sorry.
No, that's okay. The question was, what are some of the other challenges that you face as a freelancer, aside from, you know, the uncertainties around insurance and things like that? What are some of the day-to-day challenges or the overall challenges that you experience?
Well, I mean, when I started full-time freelancing, I made sure I had a good amount of money in the bank, meaning I didn't want to have to rely on specifically that income without having some sort of support, because you never really know, especially when you're starting out, how much you're going to get. So, you know, make sure you've got a little bit of a nest egg put away in case the money isn't coming in. Like right now, I know Leanne said that it's a good time to be freelancing, but it depends on who you are too and what your experience level is. So maybe you're not having as much money coming in during COVID, but having a little bit of a nest egg there really helps. And then my biggest piece of advice is to just be patient. We've already talked about this a little bit. You've got to create those relationships. And what is it they say about marketing? You have to touch something 7 times before somebody responds. Same thing with freelancing sometimes. You have to put out a lot of feelers, a lot of requests, and maybe the first or second time they don't even respond to you. But you got to be persistently patient, I guess maybe is the best way to say that. Because you don't want to, if you really want to work with that client, don't give up. Because ultimately something might break. And then you've already, you know, established yourself as somebody who's really interested in working with them. You've got the expertise in the client information. You know what you can do. And like I said before, never sell yourself short. If you feel like you deserve more, then you do.
I saw Mark had a question over in the chat, and yeah, I do. I carry the professional liability insurance. It's through State Farm, and it was fairly easy. Our State Farm agent has been with my husband's family for like 30 years, so it was pretty easy, and he knew exactly, you know, what we needed to have, and it just is another safeguard for yourself.
So I think, you know, you're kind of talking about all of these things, and I think that actually this question is probably relevant to freelancers most of the time, but certainly a lot of us in this moment in time. And I'm curious, so if you're a freelancer and you're pretty much working on your own, you don't necessarily have those work relationships, those office relationships that you would normally have if you were going into an actual office every day, which again, in this current time, most of us are experiencing that as well. How do you maintain a sort of like camaraderie or relation? Do you connect with other freelancers to kind of develop that sort of network of people? Are there other organizations that you're involved in that allow you to make those connections and have a little bit more of a, you know, camaraderie with others in your industry? Can you talk a little bit about how you sort of replace that office mate kind of relationship in a freelance role? Or maybe you don't, I don't know. Melissa, maybe you just hang out with your husband and your baby and those are your office mates.
I can chime in, or Leanne, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say I've proactively started contacting different freelancers and even just different small business owners. And also, you know, PRSA, everyone has been wonderful and supportive, and it's been incredible to be part of the group with all, you know, professionals that are like-minded in the same field and batting ideas off of each other.
I agree with Leanne. That was something that I did prior to going off on my own. I really honestly started networking probably almost a year before I really took the dive, and that's how I ultimately was connected to Angie. I met her boss probably at least 6 months before I went off full-time on my own. And I met her boss through a different contact in the Omaha area who owns a different agency here. But also I kind of see my clients as colleagues, if you will. I really like to tell them that we're kind of partners. I'm kind of an extension of their team in a way. So, pre-COVID, I wasn't afraid to go to agencies and meet in person or grab coffee and brainstorm. Now it's a lot more talking over the phone, but again, I still see myself as an extension of their team. So I don't feel like I'm a one-man show all the time. That's my take.
Yeah, that's great.
I agree with you, Melissa. I have a couple clients, like you said, I don't meet with them in person like I was, but pre-COVID, but there were a few times when I had regular clients who I would be in the office with maybe 1 or 2 days a week to be part of the team. And that was important to me because you do lose that when you become a freelancer. You really are. I'm an introvert, number one, to start. So I'm not a big networker. I don't like to go to events and meet people. It's just not in my comfort zone. But I like to meet people through other people, if that makes sense. And then at the same time, when you're part of a team or even a small group of people that you work with on a regular basis as a client, then you start to form some of those relationships as well. I often will have one good part-time, and what I mean part-time is I'm almost a part-time employee with an agency or with a nonprofit. So I'm in the office with them maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and that really helps strengthen the relationship, but also my knowledge of what they're doing. It's hard to do that sometimes when you're working from home or remotely. But I also love that I'm a part of something else, even though it's part-time or freelance. And then you don't always have the drama that follows with full-time employees as well, which I'm not a big fan of.
Absolutely. Definitely some upsides to that as well. We had a question, do you collaborate with other freelancers on projects, for example, in graphic design or video, if that is not your strength personally?
I'd love to dive into this question first, if that's okay. So I am not a designer, and I admit that wholeheartedly. I actually have a couple of preferred designers that I will refer to clients if, say, I'm creating a research-intensive white paper, for example. I'll do all the research and I'll do all the writing, and I'll say, now, do you have a designer in-house? If not, I'd be happy to refer you to so-and-so. She's worked with me in the past. And I usually try to cater it to that client. So if it's a healthcare client, for example, I have a designer who's really good in that. If it's an ad client, another person for that. So I think that if you are someone like me and copywriting is really your specialty, it's important to have those resources for other skills that you might not be able to bring to the table.
Yeah, right now I'm collaborating with another freelancer. So and I'm working on growing my own freelancer network, because I feel like sometimes there could be or will be folks that want help, and you're either too slammed to help them, or it's not in your wheelhouse. And I feel like that's where it's important to have that network. And then also you kind of want to support people that are in your own field. You kind of want to have those working relationships. You're all out on your own running your business. And I think that kind of speaks to the question before about, getting that work balance is, you've built your own network of people who are just like you, who you can talk to if you run into a problem as well.
Yeah. Mike, you're muted. There you go.
I'm sorry. I thought I had muted myself. I have a couple of graphic artists that I work with. I can do basic layout. I can do some design, but in video, I can do video with my phone, but to package something with music and make it really professional, I'm going to work with somebody that I've worked with in the past, because that's not my strength. If you want a video for Facebook or something like that, that's one thing, but a full package is totally different. Like I said, I will work with a graphic artist to do charts and some things that I can't really do myself. And then if I know that I'm working with a client and they want to do something that I know is not my strength, I love handing that off to somebody that I trust, because they're going to come back to you later on, and you've given them business. Now they're going to come back to you when they know that they have to do something, or they want to do something that maybe is your strength. And creating that relationship is a good back and forth. Yeah, I think a lot of the time as freelancers, we think we need to be able to do it all. But when we work in communications for a firm or an agency, we don't do it all then. So why do we feel like as a freelancer, we have to do it all now? It's okay to have those resources. It's really valuable to have those resources.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we had 2 more questions come in through chat. What do you wish clients knew, or what does it mean to be a good client for a freelancer?
Yeah, I feel like being a good freelancer is just staying on top of your work, being deadline driven, which I know in the PR field, all of us are. And like people have mentioned earlier, being communicative with clients, following up and seeing how you could help. And, again, just staying on top of what you need to do so that you can, be responsive to clients. I think that those are kind of the big things.
Absolutely.
I would like to say, sorry, Aaron, I didn't mean to
Go ahead.
interrupt you, but from a client perspective, I think what we need from them is, and what I need from my clients is, I need to know what's working and what's not working. Because a lot of the time we're providing stuff for them, and maybe it's social media or an advertising something, but we can't be the person who monitors and measures. So I want to know, is that working? Is there something we could do differently so that I can provide something better for you that will work? And I think that communication is really important to keep that flow going, because we need to, I want to provide ROI for my clients. I want to make sure that what I do is measurable and is, resulting in something. So that's really important from a client perspective for me.
Yeah, that's great.
I would also just touch on something that Mike and I mentioned earlier. I know that he said he doesn't always set, an expectation of timeline to be paid or things like that, but we have to pay the bills too. So just like those clients have to keep the lights on at their places of work, we need to keep the lights on in our homes or wherever we are working. And so just, recognize our value. And at the end of the day, we are experts in the services that we provide. So recognizing our value and just being respectful to pay the freelancer that you choose to work with in a timely manner.
Yeah.
I was just going to add to that I found it most helpful when, they give you, I think at the beginning of a project or a working relationship, more information is better than less. So you can get the full, because you're coming into an organization that you are just learning about. So having that full download of not only the scope of what they would like you to do, but also just the general culture at the workplace, and what's their ultimate goal. And because a lot of times you're plugging into a campaign that's already going on, so and So what's the ultimate goal of the campaign? And just having that information at the very start will help you help them the most, I think.
Yeah, that's great. And Julie actually had a question that I feel like kind of goes along with that, which is, how do you deal with clients who aren't always super responsive? And kind of an offshoot of that also is, for example, if you have a client whose work isn't super steady, but you want to continue working with them, how do you reach out without seeming like you're being too pushy or salesy?
I would suggest kind of setting a reminder on your calendar for every week or every couple of weeks. You know, obviously you don't want to reach out to them every single week, but if it has been a few days, maybe set a reminder for a week from now. And then if you still haven't heard back, then maybe 2 weeks from now. Another piece of advice that I received, and I try to do this, for example, when I work with Angie, if I don't hear from you by X date, I'll follow up with you. So I set the expectation with the client so they know that I will be getting back to them if I haven't heard from them. So then I'm really not coming across as annoying when I circle back with them next Tuesday, because they know that if I haven't heard from them by next Tuesday, they're going to be hearing from me.
I think too, it circles back to the coming at them with an idea. So if it's, you know, a client that where you wish the work was more steady, contacting them with useful information and saying like, oh, hey, I saw this article in Bloomberg and I feel like this really relates to your business and this could be a blog topic. Or just checking in on how things are going. I understand like needing to strike the balance, and sometimes I feel like it's just an internal dialogue where you're feeling like you're too pushy, but maybe the client's not viewing it that way. So I think that it's striking that balance too with, okay, am I being self-conscious, or am I actually being a total creeper and, you know, blowing up their cell phone? Like, I think that there's a balance that you can strike with that.
There's probably a level too of just acknowledging that people are busy. So it may seem to you like you're reaching out to them a lot, but they may have been like, oh yeah, I thank you for doing that because I had so many other emails come in that I completely, you know, forgot to respond to or whatever. So I think it is good to have that inner dialogue to make sure we're not overcompensating for what may not actually be true. Well, I want to be really, oh, Angie, sorry.
I want to add to that. So I think too, like, that goes back to like who you want to work with too. Like right now you may be working with someone who isn't very communicative, and it's like if so this is a funny story. The mechanic that I go to, they are so nice to me and they've always been honest, and I've been going there for 20 years. And when I would sit in there, I would sometimes wait for my car, because back when I was single, I only had one car, right? And so anyway, so I would sit in their waiting room while they would do my car work, and these people would come in and they were all so nice, like their customers were nice. And it just was like a kind of a nice like thing to sit in their waiting room. And so I talked to the manager there, and I was like, you guys have the nicest people that come in here. Like, and he's like, yeah, we work with who we are. That's not how he said it, but like the way you are is the kind of who you attract. And so I feel like I like that Melissa reaches out. I know that she's responsive, and I know that she's going to get back to me when there is business, you know, and I want to work with someone like that. I want to work with someone who's communicative, and I appreciate when she asks questions, because it's like, yes, you need this information and I need to give it to you. So we're all, you know what I mean? And anyway, I'm not communicating very well right now, but like, it's like you work with who you want to work with. And I know that sometimes you don't have that choice if you're just starting out, but like, I would say be who you are and still be communicative. And that's like, the universe will respond.
Angie, I totally agree with that, because I think when you reach out regularly, it shows that you're really interested in their business. You have an interest or some sort of connection, and you want to make sure that they're doing well. So you know what you can provide to them to help them be successful. And that's how I look at it. Is I'm reaching out to you for a reason. It's not just because I need a paycheck. Well, I do need a paycheck, but it's also because I value the work that you do and I know what you do and I want to help you. So I don't think it's being pushy. I think it's just being, I don't know, persistent.
Yeah. And demonstrating that you're interested, that you're not just there and don't really care that much. So I think that's important. Okay, well, we're at 1 o'clock and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm just going to hand it back to Amanda really quickly, but I want to say thank you all for coming, and especially to our freelance group for providing such valuable insight. I definitely learned a lot from each one of you. So thank you so much. Amanda, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin, for moderating, and thank you to all of our freelancers. One thing we've been working on behind the scenes, when you guys each introduced yourself, we took some quick notes and we'll be turning that into a Facebook post. So we just want to share the work and the areas of specialty that you do have, and maybe throw some more work your way. So stay tuned for that. But we very much appreciate you spending your lunch hour with us. One note I did want to share, in anticipation of this program, we reached out to PRSA National to inquire about opportunities specific to freelancers. And we learned that National is considering adding a professional services category to membership in 2021. To Leanne's point, there is a section that's dedicated to the category, but it sounds like they're also looking at it from a membership perspective. So maybe a longer term piece, but something that we'll definitely keep you guys in the loop on as we learn more. Again, I want to offer a big thanks to our sponsors: Woodman Life, Omaha Steaks, Bergman Incentives, Lucas Partners, MSpace and Lovegren, FNBO, and Envoy Inc. We hope to see you at our next virtual meeting. That's on Wednesday, November 18th, over the lunch hour, where we'll hear all about growth strategies from Katie Triplett, president of the Junior League of Omaha. Thank you all for participating. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.